that point, yeah, it does appear, just looking at the Tarpon map, the red areas are those annexed areas throughout, and I'll be glad to provide a PDF of this map in detail if you like. So in the Tarpon area, it's kind of that northeast corner seems to be the primary area that's been annexed within there. And you can see quite a bit in Largo and quite a bit in Pinellas Park, those being the most common ones that I've seen in the last couple of years as well. And I'm just here for any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Justice.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And one of the reasons that I asked about having this presentation was that we started just noticing the trend on our agenda, like 1 or 2 voluntary every meeting. And so when you're having those conversations with the municipalities, and to be clear, I'm a big property rights. If you're eligible to be in Largo or some,
Right.
Godspeed. But some of these seem like just odd to me when you have an entire street, and one side of the street is unincorporated, and the other side, and they're not doing the entire street, they're doing one house on the street. Mm-hmm. And so when you're having those conversations with the municipalities, is there a, hey, is this just Mr. Smith came forward and wanted really badly to be in your city, or what's going on 138th Street?
I mean, generally, the conversation is the municipality will usually tell us what's going on. Pinellas Park, recent experience, they've often done commercial properties, and they'll say, hey, this business owner wants to come in. They're going to save some money on fees or whatnot for water and utilities. That's fairly common until recently. And the other ones are really just, individual decisions. Sometimes it's because an individual with a home wants or needs a sewer connection, and as part of that, they have to join the city. I have an employee who had to go through that process recently, so that's very common. But usually, it's a pretty benign thing that once a side of a road is annexed like that, that conversation inevitably will cross the street potentially.
Some of the again, this I remember back, I guess 10, 12 years ago, we would have representatives of a city going in, knocking on doors, sometimes with like a high-ranking member of their police department in uniform, knocking on doors, encouraging them to join their. I mean, it was city of, and this separately, city of Seminole annexed a large swath of Lellman west of Park Street, which was a huge financial hit to the Lellman area, which is now the Target and the Kohl's all along there on Park Street. That was a huge hit. But then one that really kind of, and again, I assume, what I guess is there some zoning or other issues so dramatically different in a city than in the county for development on some of these areas? And one that kind of really was interesting, and if you have to really zoom in on that map on the right on page 11, is just right over here off of Walsingham, there is a connection between Largo and unincorporated that they annexed that literally the only contiguous is the driveway that gets you into the botanical gardens, from what it looks like on the map. And so, and it's a big swath of land that I assume is going to be ripe for a pretty good development. But I just wonder, some of those areas, is the difference between what Largo allows and what the county allows on there so differently that that's advantageous or not advantageous? So those are just some of the things that popped in as we started talking about annexation, and I see, this tiny little map, and it's, again, when I pull it up on the map that you've provided, it looks like it's literally the driveway that we come in for this meeting here is the only contiguous part between the city and that property.
And I can't speak to that specific case, but now I have a challenge to go dig that up. But yeah, I mean, generally, there isn't a huge difference for the most part, what we've seen. Like I said, I think utilities drives a good bit of it. Land use perspective-wise, there isn't a big difference. One of the things we did do recently is we worked with Largo on their Tri-Cities plan. And that Tri-Cities area plan, activity center, multimodal corridor plan at the countywide level, really the design of that was us working with them to say over time, we know that this is eventually going to be something brought into the city voluntarily, and we want to work with you to make sure that you're getting the type of densities, intensities, uses, and stuff like that to ensure transit support and those types of things that we are supporting countywide. So we really you don't see that density intensity issue very much or use issue very much, at least not in my experience the last couple of years.
Very good. and I appreciate you having the staff bring this forward. And again, having gone through some of those old days, it's much better, and I appreciate how well we work with the cities, and appreciate having the refresher today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much.
And just a question here. I mean, we were talking about up in the East Lake area and having that when we made those changes to the countywide plan, it made that incentive almost there, and so we took that back away.
Correct.
The other thing that I've heard, and again, this is, each case is unique, but developers or somebody who wants to do something with a piece of property, finding it difficult, and I'm so glad that we've gone through the last year this process of looking at our building development review services, our building department. It's just difficult, or in some cases, the stormwater requirements are more stringent, or the process is more difficult as reasons to, as long as they're, I guess, contiguous to the city, to annex into a city and have an easier go of it in terms of not necessarily, sometimes it's standards, but sometimes it's just process.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's been so important this past year to at least get our development review services, building department looked at, and changes that are coming, and the ombudsman that we've put in there to help people get through the process. But I just wonder if there's anything else that we need to be aware of in that business model that is chasing people away. And maybe we change, maybe we don't, but I just wondered if we can look at some of that. So anyway. Barry, did you have any?
Well, I think we certainly, from a development standpoint, need to make sure that our processes are, regardless of whether you're in a municipality or whether you're in the unincorporated, you have a right to develop your land per our codes. And so it should be an efficient process regardless of whether you're in a municipality or in the unincorporated area. That's incumbent upon us as staff to continue to streamline that process. The choices they make about whether they go, and sometimes, like Evan said, if they need sewer and we don't have sewer access out there, well, then those are going to be choices for density that those property owners will have to make. So we have met. It's been a while now, but we met with Largo because they have a lot of donut holes and things like that, and we want to work with them, but we also want to work with the property.
I'm sorry.
Donut holes where there are areas that are completely surrounded, and so we want to continue to work with our municipalities. I don't think we have a preference one way or another. We really want to give the property owner the option and choices regarding that, and so we'll continue to work with them. And certainly from a streamlining of our development process, that is certainly our goal, is to make it seamless regardless of where you as a property owner choose to develop.
And I would just add to that and say, from an enclave perspective, particularly with the Type A enclaves, generally, we see that as a positive over time, that if these Type A enclaves are being annexed into the city, they're completely surrounded by the city already from a service delivery and all of that. It's just going to make us more efficient from delivering services, or the sheriff's department or whatever. And the other thing I would just mention is, we improve our processes. We're going to try to make it as seamless as possible, the city versus the county. But the calculus is very different. So we're not really in a position, or nor is that our position, to go, make some type of case other than to say, hey, stay in the county. Whereas I think the cities do have a incentive to go out there and add a property, or make that, or at least provide service. If somebody called them, they're gonna present the reasons why it's a positive thing.
Yeah. I think some of the comments have been made, just as long as we're aware of what's driving them.
Absolutely.
And to the extent that it's their free choice to do it, that's fine. But if we're doing something that's making it, I just want to make sure that we continue to be aware of that for policy consideration for changes or not. So
we don't want it to be the reason to be the fact that we weren't delivering some type of quality service. And I think that's absolutely front of mind in how we do the work we're doing.
And distinction between quality of service and a policy that might be different than a city.
Right.
By choice or not. So it's just something, as long as we're aware of those trends or patterns, it's just important to know. Commissioner Seal, you had a question.
You mentioned the sewer issue. So Are some of the cities basically saying that the only way we're going to give you sewer is if you annex?
Oh, yeah.
It is my understanding that that is the case. If you are in a position to be annexed and you have a septic system, if you were to apply for that extension, that would be part of the request, would be that, okay, well, you need to voluntarily annex if you want to upgrade your service.
Okay.
So,
I thought that's what was being used. But,
Right.
No, I'm sure.
Are we kind of trending to see if that's being used a lot or in any particular city?
Water
I would
and
have to
sewer,
look
yeah.
into the actual applications to see if that's been
Okay.
used more than, say, just, we have lower fees for, something, or, along those lines. We'd have to dig into that a little bit. I don't have that data.
That's okay. I think I can intuitively figure it out.
Right.
But, and are the cities being better about, we had asked that they really inform the property owner, especially if they sign an indenture, that's, say if real estate passes hands, that there's more of a process by telling the next owner, by the way, you can be annexed. Because we got a lot of pushback on that over the years.
And that's like the annexation agreements or something like that, where,
Yep.
yeah, I can't speak specifically to those kind of in advance agreements that are being signed. I don't know if, legal or someone else might have a little bit more information about how they're communicating regarding those issues. Right.
I will say, I'm unaware of what's currently occurring. I mean, I know that you probably remember what I do. When we had many property owners, and more likely maybe their predecessors in title, who had signed indenture agreements. And I will say that the municipalities are legally entitled to require annexation, or if not currently eligible for annexation, a signed promise to annex when eligible, which are those indenture agreements. I do recall when there were a lot of folks that were being kind of surprisingly annexed into municipalities when they did become eligible. Usually it was a contiguity issue.
Right.
I can't speak to what's going on today, but I would suspect that if there is a lack of complaints to many of you, that we're not seeing that at the same rate that we did once, back probably about 20 years ago. So I do think that has probably dropped off some compared to what we saw in the past.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the water or sewer sometimes draws those property owners in. I do
Right.
know there was a couple of areas near Dunedin that were not drawn in, and they're getting utilities nonetheless. It's fairly large areas, and they do pay a premium. Which I've always thought when I was in my city time that should stop after a while, because you've theoretically paid for the infrastructure, extra infrastructure, and then some. But anyway, that's for another day, another conversation. So.
Yeah, but what you'll find a lot is, especially on these larger lots where, they haven't been developed over time, well, the county doesn't have infrastructure down there, and so when they go to annex, well then, it's a cost of running the service up to connect with us and the unincorporated, or it's cheaper to go to the municipality, and so.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. All right, we're moving to unincorporated mid